6:38, good morning to you, watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Ellie.
Now let's take a look at today's front pages for you. And in the Times this morning, we're told that Rishi Sunak faces a battle with Eurosceptics in his own party as he aims to push ahead with his new Brexit deal.
The Guardian says the post-Brexit deal will be the big political gamble of Rishi Sunak's premiership.
The Telegraph says a string of positive breakthroughs during the past week are what has pushed the deal to the final stages. And Puffin Books have pledged to reissue Roald Dahl novels in their original uncensored format.
Thank heavens. The Mail leads on a grieving mother begging the Justice Secretary to keep her daughter's killer behind bars. And a Coronation exclusive within which we are told that the King and the Prince of Wales are to refuse Harry's demand for an apology.
And finally, the Mirror reports on Trees Coffee's advice to eat turnips in place of unavailable fresh produce, sparking a shortage of the root vegetable among supermarkets.
Well, that just goes to prove that she was right.
Well, and I also think that could be in part down to us.
We did say how lovely turnips are.
We did. And yesterday we were saying turnips is the way forward, and the Swede is also part of the turnip family, as we established. And now there's a shortage. And I think there could be a link there, don't you?
Yeah, I think there's a link there. It annoys me a little bit that they're saying, you know, she looks daft because of that, because I don't think she does. I think she's proving that actually we think, oh yeah, turnip, that'd be nice.
Buy British and buy in season. I think that was the message.
Turnip mash, lovely.
Yeah, lovely on a roast. Now, time to go through the papers, and joining us this morning is writer and journalist Andy Jones and author Ella Whelan. Good morning to you both. Thank you for your company this morning. Ella, let's start with you, shall we? And this in the Times, Brexit deal within days.
Yes. Turnip mash, we'll come to that.
Yes. Oh, good.
Gross. Yeah. But anyway, Brexit deal. You had a guest on earlier who was talking about this, and one of the things that the Times picks up on is this sort of small detail in which, you know, there are two elements to this. There is the serious element of whether or not this will change the future for people living in Northern Ireland, whether it will fix the hard border question, you know, big political issues. But it's also the sort of sub-level of it is that this could be it could make or break Rishi Sunak's political reputation. And part of that, as the Times reports, is there was this plan, which has been scrapped, for Ursula von der Leyen to travel to Britain to announce the success of the deal and meet with King Charles. And it was going to happen, you know, this was all going to happen with tea at Windsor Palace. And so it was going to be dubbed the Windsor Agreement. Now, you know, what it says about, you know, a vote that was for democracy, that was supposed to be about radical sovereignty and all these things being sort of neatly tied in a bow between a top EU bod and you know, an unelected monarch. I'm not sure. I don't know whether that's the reason it was scrapped or whether it was just that diaries clashed. But it's just that I think that the whole way in which this has been handled, behind closed doors meetings. I mean, you know, there is a balance, which is that we know that a lot of Brexit negotiations up until now have been scuppered and thwarted by kind of constant media meddling, constant people carping at the sidelines, you know, they're never being able to have any kind of progress. And so that might be an argument for you to say, right, everybody leave us alone and we're just going to hash it out. But the nervous Brexiteer in me says that these people can't necessarily, in particular someone like Rishi Sunak with his political background and being, you know, so cosy with Emmanuel Macron and all the kind of signals that he's been giving throughout his political career, can't be trusted with doing Brexit justice.
The whole cosy with Macron style thing, isn't that a good thing? It's not a good, because it's about, if you go head to head with these people, we're in a battle that will go on forever and a day.
That's true.
You've got to persuade them, haven't you?
That's true, but I think for me anyway, when I watched that relationship, I thought, here are two politicians who really symbolise a kind of the technocratic future of politics, which is no interest in populaces, no interest in radical democracy, or even democracy sort of generally. But the thing about the Northern Ireland, that the thing about the situation in Northern Ireland that no one wants to really admit is there can't really be a solution or a compromise that everyone agrees with. The DUP is not going to like this, and neither are Remainers, who are still, as we know, trying to, hardline Remainers who are still trying to overthrow the whole thing. So don't crack out the bunting yet, is what I'd say.
Well, we've waffled on about that enough. Let's talk about the next general election, Andy.
Yes.
Keir Starmer's on course for a landslide. So
we keep hearing...
I mean, we're probably 2 years out.
Yeah, it's a little bit like a football team being top of the Premier League by 10 points at Christmas. You feel like they're very much on course to win the title, but there's a lot of games still to be played. Keir Starmer, according to a poll by YouGov, 17-point lead, 46% of the nation will vote Labour, 29% of the nation will vote Conservative, so they say. Interestingly, Starmer is beating the Conservatives on everything from, everything bar Ukraine. Let's go through it. They prefer Starmer on housing, they prefer Starmer on crime, they prefer Starmer on the economy, the NHS, the cost of living and personal security. It is worth saying this is a poll of 1,500 people. I mean, you could almost get a poll of 1,500 people in this building. So, I mean, these polls are always trumpeted as 17-point lead, colossal decision, colossal swing one way or another. Only 1,500 people. But it is true. You go up and down Britain, and we do this as a broadcast deal. You go up and down Britain, people are very concerned with how the economy is, cost of living, crime. People are, after many years of the Conservative government, perhaps looking for a change. And Keir Starmer been sitting on the fence about certain things. Rishi Sunak's floundering a little bit. Starmer certainly making capital.
Well, yeah, sort of sit there and wait for it to happen in a way. There is
you go up and down the country, and I won't ever say I know what the whole nation is saying, but you go up and down the country, and Starmer. Rishi's not really getting cut through. They're concerned about cost of living. They're concerned about different things, and all Rishi's sort of the only policy people can name is that he wants people to do maths until they're 18, and I'm not sure that's really gonna keep food in the cupboard, is it?
No, it might all change come the spring budget, though.
Yeah, and come Monday, if he gets a Brexit deal, I mean, that might be something for Rishi Sunak. Ella, I think we've got time for our turnips.
Yes.
Do you want to tell us about this? This is in the Mirror.
Yes, so, as you said at the top, there is a kind of a run on turnips where you can't actually get them in a lot of supermarkets. Whether or not that was sparked by Therese Coffey's comments on, or you guys, yes. I mean, I think it's just worth remembering what she said. She said a lot of people would be eating turnips right now rather than thinking about aspects of lettuce and tomatoes. So to be fair, she was hinting at the kind of seasonal argument.
I don't know why she's coming for criticism over it.
Well, I think it's because there has been a run of politicians, I'm thinking about 30p Lee Anderson, who have, kind of had a kind of Marie Antoinette tone about them, which at least she said eat cake rather than turnips, which says, nothing to see here, just, get some potatoes, what's your problem? Like, you can make dinner. And of course, most sensible people know you can do that, you can get by, but it's just not a good look from a government to be saying, never mind, us having high aspirations for, wanting to have...
Salad?
Or
really, high aspirations that we can have a salad?
Like, lots of choice, good food, food security being a really important thing in this country that we don't have. Instead, they're sort of saying, make do. That's the message it's coming across is
make do. With a turnip, it's a joy.
Well,
turnip.
Turnips are not just my husband loves them and I hate them, so they always sit at the back of my cupboard until they're just not quite mouldy enough, just on the turn, and then he'll peel them and enjoy it once. But there's, it's also important to say that this is not just the realm of Conservative politicians. I remember a number of years ago when Emily Thornberry from the Labour Party came in for some criticism for saying, what poor people need to do is, I'm paraphrasing here, is, they need to be taught how to plant carrots. That's how we'll fix everything. That's how we'll fix healthy food. Politicians have too much opinion on what's on your plate and not enough opinions on how to get more on your plate. There's my take.
No, perhaps a fair point. Something which is to be celebrated, I think, just as a sort of victory for common sense, Andy. Roald Dahl. His books are going to be printed now without really, really offensive words like fat.
Yes. So you're going to be able to still buy the classic edition, and you're also going to be able to buy the revised edition. So let's go through some of the specifics of what they've changed. So, for instance, Augustus Gloop, the famously fat... We're allowed to say fat here, aren't we, of course? Fat Augustus Gloop in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, he's now described as enormous rather than fat. Now, I don't know, personally, when I feel a little bit fat, I say fat. I'd rather be called fat than enormous.
Yeah. Sounds worse, doesn't it?
Worse. Enormous, being called an enormous child is surely more offensive to parents than a fat child.
Yeah.
Elsewhere, the twits are described as beastly instead of ugly and beastly, and a character in James and the Giant Peach, there's quite a long poem which I won't go through, is described as thin. They're no longer described as thin. The thin has been removed. So no thin, no fat. No thin, no fat, no ugly.
She can't describe body shape in the new
No,
example.
but you can call them enormous.
You can't, yeah. I mean, isn't it just crap?
And there's also been, I mean, we were talking in the break about, you know, how the sort of the blind way of approaching kind of words in which the word black has been removed from, for example, describing the
White as a
BFG's
sheet.
cloak. Yeah, so that, but you know, the important thing about children's literature, particularly Roald Dahl, is kids love nasty stuff. They love dark stuff. They love, you know, they don't like sort of sugar plum fairy stories.
But it's all. Do you know what? It's always been that. I mean, just after I'd left school, primary school things, it was when the whole "you can't say blackboard" thing came in. It had to be a chalkboard. Well, I don't call this an ink sheet.
No.
Do I? So it's paper, and that board is. We say whiteboard. But then you can't see that. But I mean, it's all just this stuff like this where it makes no sense.
And I don't think anyone's asking for it. I think that's the really important point.
Yeah.
I would really like Puffin to show its reasoning behind why it did this. Did it have 10,000 emails in saying, please, I cannot face reading my kid this book anymore?
Because
no.
it describes some James.
Yeah,
No,
they
it's
did not have that.
It's entirely performative. You know, no child is going to read a cloak described as black. No child of colour is going to read a cloak described as black and say they're saying that I'm a cloak or anything ridiculous.
No.
You can sort of understand at least some of the logic around removing fat, etc., but primary colours that describe a colour of that description is ridiculous.
And it's almost a bit as well, like, where is the line then? If you're going to take that stance on literature, I mean, I went to see To Kill a Mockingbird a few weeks ago, and there's some language in that would not be used today. But it's part of history, it's the literature of the time, and that's important to the audience.
To Kill a Mockingbird is an anti-racist piece of work, in the same way that Huckleberry Finn is. And if you take out that, you lose all the power of what those authors. And also, there's just a point here about artistic freedom. I mean, I know, you know, Roald Dahl's books aren't. It's not great art like you'd imagine, you know, a painting in a museum, but it is still a piece of artistic work which you have no right to go in and censor, because it is what he intended, and it should remain as he intended.
And where do we stop with sizeism as well? Does the BFG now be described as the quite large friendly giant?
Yes.
I don't know what we do.
The unusually tall.
Yes.
The unusually tall, pally person.
Tall person, yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Anyway, I'm sure you've got a view on that.
Yeah, sure we do.
GBNews at gbnews.uk. Ella, Andy, thank you both
Thank
very
you
much
very
indeed.
much.
We'll see you a little bit later on.